Hello, everybody. My name is Chris Naylor, and my topic is the real invention of the first automobile. My purpose today is to inform everybody about what the real story actually is behind the first automobile. It's not what we always think it is, or what's in the history books, or what we've always been told. There's actually a occurrence of a first automobile before Henry Ford's Model T. I'll be taking you from the light bulb moment of conception that a motorized vehicle could be possible in our lives to the inventors Carl and Bertha Benz, and also through the first journey that Miss Bertha Benz took Carl's invention of the first horseless carriage, ending with the mass production of what we know in the history books and everything, the Henry Ford Model T and Henry Ford Company. Basically, it took a man to engineer the first automobile, but it took a woman to literally drive it forward. And and I'm very sure for most people the car plays a very important part in our lives, from getting to school to work to grocery stores, um, to if you drive like road trips, going down the shore, going to Florida, going on cruises, anything like that. Wherever we need to go, we obviously take a car to commute there, from there and to home. And none of this would be possible without the invention of the automobile. And first, what I'm going to talk about is the conception and the invention of the first automobile. Second, I will be talking about the first journey of the horseless carriage. And finally, I will be reaching the age of mass production and the automobile. The conception and invention, basically, the invention of the automobile is probably one of the most influential leaps forward in human history to what we know today. Gone are the horse and carriage, and this single invention would change the course of history forever as we know it. And the credit of the very first automobile goes to German born Carl Friedrich Burns with the Benz patent motor wagon. He was granted the patent in 1886 for the carriage. He first tried to get a patent for it in 1885, but they dismissed it, and he had a ton and ton and ton of financial help from his wife Bertha, and she would play a very pivotal part in his invention. Moving on to the very first journey of the horseless carriage, according to Barbara Marazani of History.com, after the first few public displays didn't go well, he tweaked his invention but was reluctant to continue marketing it. And Bertha, his wife, stepped in big time to change history. Bertha and her two teenage sons became the first passengers of the horseless carriage in their journey in 1888. They traveled from Mannheim to Porsweim, 65 miles, and it took them a total of 12 hours to complete the journey. And basically, along the way, she acted as a mechanic, fixing anything that popped up. She actually used one of her stockings to fix a gear to keep it running. Um, when she would go into small villages or towns to try to get the substance that she used for gas at the time, people actually called her a witch and wouldn't serve her gas or anything in the pharmacy. And the one pharmacy that she actually went to was actually awarded to be the first gas station in history. And finally, reaching the age of mass production, after this journey, it sealed the deal basically for Carl and Bertha's invention and ushered in the new age of cars. Orders began to come in for the Benz patent motor wagon, and the first one was sold to a Parisian. Um, Biography.com notes that later Benz introduced a four-wheeled version, and this is regarded as a series produced car. All of the early models were pretty expensive because it took Carl and Bertha a very good bit to invent them. And Carl, actually, he was an avid bicyclist in his life, and he always worked on combustion engines, and he finally decided to put those two together, and which gave him this invention and this idea of the actual horseless carriage. Basically, at the time, only the cars were basically only meant for the wealthy to afford, while everybody like middle class, lower class, or just poor class, um, they actually had to stick with the horse and the carriage, the traditional. But if you were lucky and you were wealthy at the time, you could purchase one of Carl's automobiles and take that to commute everything. It did take a little bit quicker, and it was a little bit better because you didn't have to feed the horses or anything. And by the time of his death, Carl had his dream basically realized and it was set out in front of him. Henry Ford actually took what Benz invented in the late 19th century, refined it, and basically made the automobile accessible to everybody, not just the wealthy class. He made it available and accessible for everybody, the average person, the low class person, with the first Model T introduced in 1908, the age of the car at a price that almost anybody could afford had basically made it a reality in our lives. And as we know it, the assembly line in the Ford company was introduced, the Model T was introduced, and it kicked off even farther after that point. And basically, in conclusion, I hope this was an interesting I hope this was interesting for everybody to learn about the real story behind the first automobile and the main players behind this advancement. It's not what we always thought it was. I just recently found this out a couple years ago when I was digging into some research. And next time you get in a car and you're driving, hopefully you remember the Benzes and how they changed the world.